Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our session. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of SAP process automation in the cloud. And what you're going to get a sense for is what's happening today in the marketplace, as well as we move more to a cloud-first stance in our IT organizations, what that's going to look like for SAP automation. I'm Andrew Hayden. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager for our Automate products, and I will be your host today. I'm also joined by three of my outstanding colleagues, Charles Howard, Martin Munka, and our distinguished engineer in Sigrid Koch. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, that would be great. Charles, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Andrew said, my name is Charles Howard. I'm Senior Product Manager here at Precisely. Been working with the Automate product suite for coming up on 13 years now.
Great.
To you, Martin.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Monka. I'm also a Senior Product Manager for the Automate products and been with Windshuttle / Precisely for 7 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sigrid Koch. I'm based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Been with Windshuttle / Precisely now for about 13 years, and I'm a principal sales engineer.
Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Many of you in the SAP community probably are not familiar with Precisely, but there's a very good chance you're familiar with Windshuttle. In 2021, Windshuttle was acquired by Precisely, so we are now very proudly part of the world's leader in data integrity and delivering data integrity solutions to our customers. A little bit more about Precisely. So we are as I mentioned, we're the world's leader in data integrity. So we deliver the software, services, and data enrichment capability that allow you to get the accurate, consistent, and contextualized data you need to make really confident business decisions. Because after all, I mean, data is what is driving our businesses today. We've got about 12,000 customers worldwide in over 100 countries. We are in 99 of the Fortune 100, and we've got about 2,500 employees worldwide. Now, from a customer standpoint, we are in many of the biggest brands in the world. They trust us with their data, and hopefully you'll trust us with your data too. In addition to that, we have many of the leading technology providers as partners as well. So there's a good chance that somewhere in your IT environment, many of these partners exist, and we can work with them and have strong partnerships with them. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and we will try and get to them during this presentation, either during the presentation or at the end. If we do not get to your question, just be assured somebody from Precisely will get back to you with an answer to your question. So it will not go unanswered, and you will find out what you need to know. So let's get started. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about digital transformation and cloud first. What's kind of driving this movement, and how has it changed over the past few years? Because there have been a number of changes that have happened just in terms of where we are from a corporate standpoint. How are we looking at digital transformation? And again, this move to cloud first, and what is the impact on our business? I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about complex processes in SAP, kind of what are those challenges that it provides you? And what do they look like? How do we define them? And what are some of the other things around processes and data in SAP that we can help you with? And I'll give you also a brief overview of what does our portfolio look like? What is the Precisely Automate platform, and how can it help you? And then I'll walk you through a case study very briefly of a customer that we're helping today. So this is an example of what you can do today pre-cloud. They're not using any cloud solutions, and they're not looking at it that way. It's very much an on-prem solution for them. But it give you an idea, it hopefully will give you an idea of what is possible with today's technology. Now, from a market update standpoint, obviously a lot of things have changed recently, and the pandemic has brought a number of things to the fore. It's interesting, though, that in 2019, when KPMG did their CEO Outlook survey, they found that about 2/3 of CEOs agreed with the statement that acting with agility is the new currency of business. If we are too slow, we will be bankrupt. And ironic that this was in 2019, because when the pandemic hit in 2020, this was very much put to the test. It basically became that question of how agile is our business? How fast can we pivot? How rapidly can we make the change to what has became literally overnight a new normal? We have distributed teams. We have, if we had manual processes, what do we do? We had people in the office that were passing things around, and it just doesn't work anymore under the current environment. So it brought to the fore this need for agility, this need to be able to adapt to a highly dynamic marketplace. And then when you add cloud first on top of this, you find that, cloud really has become that strategic platform for growth and innovation. Many, many companies are looking at it as that's the next thing. That's the next sort of evolution of digital transformation, and how are we going to change our businesses? I mean, we're spending a lot of money and we're investing a lot in this. Gartner estimates that in 2022 alone, we're going to spend almost $500 billion on cloud first. So massive amounts of investment that we're making in this. And KPMG, during the pandemic, when they went back and talked to CEOs again, they found that about 80% of them now see themselves accelerating their digital transformation efforts. Now, we spent decades literally doing digital transformation. And I think what happened with the pandemic is it really exposed the limitations of where we'd gotten with digital transformation and this desperate need to accelerate it. And when we look at the cloud aspect of digital transformation, PricewaterhouseCoopers found that 73% of business leaders are actually heavily engaged in their cloud strategy. They're involved. They want to know what's happening because they want to understand how it's going to change their business. Again, cloud is becoming that engine for growth and innovation. If I'm a C-level executive, I really want to know, what is that effect going to be on the business writ large? And what is it going to be on my particular part of the business? However, when we look at the value that cloud is bringing to enterprises as we move to the cloud, a little over half have yet to see any substantial return. So it's one of those things that has a lot of promise, but it's finding those applications and activities where cloud really makes a difference. And I think we're going to show you today, as we walk through this, areas where Precisely in the Precisely Automate portfolio, both today and moving forward, can really help drive some benefits into that cloud, into your cloud first strategy as we go get there. Now, one of the things that we are very aware of, though, is regardless of whether you're talking about on-prem or in the cloud, you really have to be aware that process and data are inextricably linked. They are interdependent with one another. You can't do a process improvement initiative without looking at the data that process creates and manages. Because if you improve a process that is creating bad data or generating bad data, all you end up doing is just generating a lot more bad data fast. And that doesn't help your business at all. Same with the data quality initiative. If you're doing a data quality initiative where you're cleaning up your databases and the data that you already have, and yet the processes haven't been changed to address that data quality problem in the front end, you're not really improving anything. And this happens across all of your organization and really all of your data objects, whether you're talking about product data, whether you're talking about your customer and vendor, your really essentially your master data categories. And within SAP, this is equally as important, because when we look at the master data in SAP, that materials, vendor, customer, and finance, those are absolutely critical. And being able to manage those processes more efficiently and more effectively and improve that initial data quality is important for your business in so many ways. But the reality of it is also, when we start looking at where do you actually run your business, it tends to be below the waterline. It's in all of those various processes that use your master data. It's in your bills of materials and your routings and your account creation and your assets, task list, work center, everything that happens from a transactional standpoint that uses master data. That's what you run your business on. So it's not just about the master data, it's about everything else. And that's one of those areas where the Precisely Automate portfolio absolutely excels at being able to deliver benefits throughout your organization. And another thing, when we look at the challenge around data and complexity, it really falls on these two axes. One is literally the volume of data that you're moving through a process, and the other one is the complexity of that process. If you have a low volume, low complexity process, you are never going to automate it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you can automate it, sure, but you're never going to get your return on investment. If it's a simple process you do once a week or so, doesn't make any sense. Why would you spend the money to automate it? On the other end, if it's a highly complex, data intensive process that uses very high volumes of data, those are often big IT projects that they're going to farm out to a systems integrator. So they're going to go out and they're going to hire Deloitte, because many of those processes are often very, very specific to a company, to an enterprise. And it's not something you're going to do in-house, let's just say. However, everything in the middle is where you can use an automation platform, or you can use our automation platform, as a matter of fact. And that's what we've done for 20 years. We have been able to look at those SAP processes, those highly complex, data-intensive processes that may not be the most data-intensive or the absolute, uniquely complex to your organization, and we can automate those. And I think the case study that I walk you through is going to be a really good example of what we mean when we show the benefits for a complex data intensive process. But one of the first things we really have to do is we have to define, what do we mean by a complex data intensive process? And many SAP processes fall into this. I think when you start looking at how do you manage your business and what happens with processes and data across your entire enterprise. So what does this look like? Well, I like to say, when I talk about these things, I like to start in the middle. So let's start with your finished good. In this case, it's a soft drink, but it could be anything. It could be an automobile in the middle there. And you've got an upstream and you've got a downstream. The upstream is everything that it takes to get to that finished good. It's your materials, it's your vendors, it's your production planning, it's manufacturing operations, it's all those other systems that are engaged. And then there's downstream. Now, downstream tends to be much different. It tends to be the things that are unique to your company, your industry, or your particular marketplace. So we're not going to talk about downstream today. We're going to talk about upstream, because so many of those things are common and consistent no matter what you're making, no matter what your product is. Some of the common challenges that we see talking to our customers across multiple industries are, you've got lots of different raw materials, finished and semi-finished goods that you're putting into that final product that you have. You've got multiple vendors, multiple suppliers, complex data objects, complex processes, frequent changes, complex customer environments and vendor environments. You've got often very tight margins. And as we've seen with the supply chain crunch that we have lately, or often those margins get even tighter because things have become much more scarce or harder to get. You have seasonal exceptions, promotional packaging, all those kind of things that go through this. So those are common challenges no matter what it is you're actually making. And one of the common challenges that we see also from our customers is the way people are managing their data. I've stood in front of rooms of people and said, how many of you manage your data outside of SAP using Excel? Just Excel spreadsheets. And it's almost universally, that's one of the most important and critical ways that people actually manage their data. Don't feel bad if you do that. But just know that the challenge with that is it's often very difficult to govern. And in many cases, people are managing that data. And at the end of a process, they may go through a whole review and approval process with that Excel file. And then they turn it over to somebody to do data entry into SAP. So they're entering it either into the SAP GUI if they're in ECC, or they've got Fiori apps, or they're using GUI for HTML if they're in S/4HANA. And when you do that, what you're doing is introducing error at the end of the process, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. Now, anytime you've got manual data entry into the SAP GUI, it's just complicated and complex, and it needs a often specific knowledge of what are all those various fields that you're looking at. And with complex processes and Fiori apps, you're often talking about multiple Fiori apps, or you're stuck with the limitations of what those Fiori apps are. And you'll see some examples when Sigrid goes through the demo of what does Fiori app automation look like, and why are people looking for it. And it's many of the same issues that we see currently today with people who are using the SAP GUI and ECC. So don't feel bad if you're using Excel files. Currently, there is a way to work with that, and that's what we do with our Studio and Evolve products. And also, there are ways to help automate and simplify those GUI processes and those Fiori processes coming up. What else is complicated about those upstream processes? Well, think about what all of the different places that it has to go through, and all the different places that it has to touch in your organization, and where the master data lives. These are all mostly master data driven processes. So we're going to start with product development. So product development is going to come up with a great new idea. We've got this great new product. Here's what's in it. We've gotten to the point where it's ready to go. They go to procurement and they say, here's the components that we need, and go. So procurement goes out, they find who are the vendors that can supply all these things. Often it's a highly complex vendor environment. Complicating it even more is all of those vendors are often supplying multiple materials each. So now you've got the complexity of your vendor, you've got your materials, those things often overlap. You need that throughout the rest of the process. Manufacturing operations need to figure out, how do we actually manufacture this product? How do we put it together? How do we take those various materials and combine them in a way that creates the final product that product development had envisioned? Your warehouse and your logistics people are going, okay, when do we expect these materials? How big are they? What do they look like? Who are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Are we going to have to go through on the logistics side? Is there clearing that we have to do? Lots of different stuff that happens there. And then on the back end of it, and this I know is downstream, but it becomes that question of how big is the finished product? Where are we going to put it? Where does it have to go? All that kind of stuff. Production planning is then sitting there going, okay, we have to put this thing into the production plant. When are we going to manufacture it? Which relies on, when are all the materials going to be here? Who are the materials coming from? What are all the restrictions that we have to deal with? Controlling is looking at all of that going, are we going to make money on this product? How much are the materials going to cost? What is the cost to actually produce it? And, what do we have to price it at to actually make money? And then finance is sitting there in the middle going, how much money is this going to cost us on the front end? So, what are those materials going to cost? What's it going to cost to manufacture it? And how much money are we going to have to pay? We're going to have to pay workers and things like that. And then on the downstream end, what do we have to charge for it? And how much money are we going to get in so that we're profitable? So think about what that process looks like. I'm sure in your company, it looks something like that, only a lot more complicated. But throughout that entire process, you've got core master data that needs to be managed and, created and managed and changed and governed from vendor and material and customer and finance and all of that various information that has to make its way through those processes, along with any transactional data and any changes that have to happen. So highly complex processes that work their way through in order to get a product just to the point where it's been manufactured. And then you've got all of those upstream data and objects. So this is your bills of materials and your routings and your purchase info records and your source lists and your pricing and every little bit of that, which are all, the core parts of the data that you need, again, to manage and run your business. What do they look like? What do they sound like? How do they work? And how complex are those data objects? Now, when you try and combine the data part of it with that process part of it that we just talked about, often what happens is you end up with this giant Gordian knot of data stuff that you're not quite sure what to do with. And when you look at SAP is so complex that it is often very difficult to automate. And that's where we come in. That's where we believe very firmly that the Precisely Automate portfolio and our platform can help you solve a lot of those complexity problems. And the beauty of it is you can start anywhere. You can start with your material master, or you can start with vendor creation and your vendor management. There is no sort of start here point. You can start anywhere in that process and work your way through. And many of these are processes that are human in the loop processes. So a lot of traditional automation tools don't work very well because human beings are fickle and we tend to do things in unexpected ways. RPA bots like things to happen exactly the same way every time. Certain other automation programs and processes like things to happen exactly the same way every time. And that's one of the beauties of our platform. And I'm going to walk you through just the basics of that platform, and then you're going to hear a little bit more about it as we go further into the presentation. So what does automation look like to us? What does it look like to Precisely? Well, we believe very firmly that what we deliver is the complete or a complete automation platform. And this includes data management or data automation and process automation. And in our world, data automation really sits at that Excel to SAP level, where you can use Excel to manage your SAP data You can check your data against SAP before you do your posting. You can use the full capability of Excel to be able to make any changes you need to do. It's really great for mass data changes, things like pricing, materials updates, all of those kind of things. If you need to do mass postings, M&A, so mergers and acquisitions, where you have lots of data coming from new systems that need to go into your SAP system. So data automation through our Studio product absolutely is the right way to go for those mass data processes. And then you've got process automation, and process automation really looks at the workflows that surround those when they need to go through like a complex review and approval process or an account creation process. And in our world, process automation comes in two flavors. You've got Excel workflow and you've got Foreman workflow. So Excel workflow is able to take those desktop automation or those data automation files from Studio and manage them through a complex workflow. And what it does is your workers continue to work in Excel, but that Excel file is then managed through the process. And at the end, when it receives final approval, it automatically posts to SAP. So there's no manual data entry at the end, and it's fully governed. So you know exactly what has happened everywhere, every step along the way with that Excel file and with that data. You know who's touched it, who's added to it, and who's made changes. Now, Foreman workflow gives you additional benefits, and it's really great for complex processes and coordinating all those complex processes for manufacturing like we talked about. And when I walk you through the case study, it's really an excellent example of how Foreman workflow can drive great benefits through an organization. It's good for things like account creations, where you've got multiple people in an organization that need to be involved in the account creation. So procurement may start the process for a vendor create, and then it needs to go to finance and master data and maybe your materials team and a couple of others. Well, each one of those teams can just put in the information that they need to. They get a form that comes to them that is role specific. So it's role based. They look at it and go, oh, this is just my information about this if I'm a finance person. It's a very, very efficient way to manage things. And it can work in either parallel or it can work sequentially. Once all that data is received, it gets recombined and a final approver reviews it and posts that data into SAP automatically. Again, you're able to validate that data throughout the process against SAP. You're able to govern, it's fully governed, you know what's happening, and it's got a lot of other data quality tools that can go along throughout it. So our portfolio has Studio, which is a desktop application. We have Studio Manager that provides a lot of user and policy management for those Studio users. And then we've got Evolve, which is that workflow process automation platform that we have. It includes Studio, but it also gives you a great number of capabilities. And what does all this do for you? Well, it gives you a complete set of capabilities. It gives you that choice. What is the right interface for my team at which part of a process? Is it going to be forms? Is it going to be Excel files? Is it going to be some combination of the two? It gives you those role-based forms I mentioned. It gives you dynamic process linking. If you think about these big complex processes, rarely are they a single process. They're often a process made up of sub-processes. Dynamic process linking allows you to link all those together. So if you've got a set of sub-processes that have to be finished before a next level process starts, Evolve helps manage that. So the dynamic process linking says, okay, all of these are finished, kick off the next process. But it also gives you visibility and governance all the way through. So if you've got multiple layers, that's fine. It's easy to see what's happening throughout them. So you get process dashboards and reporting, audit trails, so you know what's happening and you can quickly find out where things are. Or if you've got an audit that happens, just pull it up and you know exactly what steps were taken and by whom. We talked about that automatic data exchange with SAP. So you can take data out of SAP, you can review data, you can post data into SAP, you can pull data out, make changes, and repost it. Live SAP data validation. And again, you've got that granular user and policy management throughout. So this is what we see as being the complete set of capabilities that you need for an automation platform for those complex data intensive SAP processes. You need that data management and data automation with the Excel to SAP, and you need the process automation that then can work it through a complex workflow. And when you have that level of flexibility, there's a lot of things you can do within your organization at all levels. And one of the other important things is you need to make sure that it works across all of your entire SAP landscape. Because if you think again about what we talked about, all the processes from product development through procurement and vendor and materials and everything else, you're not just talking about one place in SAP. It literally touches all of SAP. Your entire SAP environment is being touched by the data and the processes that happen in order to get something out the door, in order to create that product in the middle, if you will. And our platform does that. It works across your entire SAP landscape. It's not a point solution. It is a solution that no matter what you need to, where you need to work. So if you do just need something for, again, vendor create or vendor management, it can do that. But if you need something to link together on multiple parts of it, we can do that as well for you. So now I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like and how one of our customers is using our Evolve platform to get massive amounts of benefits for them. So this is an energy drinks company, and they, like a lot of companies, managed most of their business using Excel spreadsheets. And so what they generally did was they had one per product, had one large workbook, and that workbook had individual worksheets within it, and different individuals owned so there was usually a product manager who owned the workbook, and then you had different people within the organization who either owned worksheets or they owned columns within the worksheets, or even down to the cell level. So highly complicated to try and figure out if there was a bottleneck or a challenge, or there was a question about something. It could often take somebody half a day to track down the right person to figure out what's happening in cell C12 on this particular worksheet and this particular workbook. Highly inefficient, but it worked for them. It was a little bit of organized chaos, and they also talked about it as a little bit of spreadsheet hell, but it worked until they did a global distribution deal with one of the largest soft drinks companies in the world. And suddenly they discovered that this Excel-based system simply was not able to scale. It couldn't grow as quickly as they needed it to. It couldn't adjust to this new business dynamic that they were in. It was the bottleneck. It was the part of the SAP process that just stopped them, because they had no way to manage all of those things through in an efficient way, in an efficient manner. So we sat down with them and spent almost a month doing process workshops. Let's look at every aspect of your process. What lives on that worksheet? What does it look like? What are the technologies available, and who are the people that are involved? So this triumvirate of things is absolutely critical to understand. It's not just about the process. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about the people. It's the data that's managed through all of those things. And after working with them through that process, a couple of things came to the forefront. One of the biggest learnings was there's not just one product launch type. There are multiple product launch types. And I'm sure this is true in your business too. There's new products. So it's the brand new product that comes out of product development, and they say, hey, this is something completely new and completely different. Or there's line extensions. I always say, like, think Cherry Coke. You've got product changes. And with that global distribution deal, this was a big part of what happened to these guys, because suddenly you had ingredient and label changes, you had language differences, ingredients that are available or by legal and regulatory requirements in certain countries, they couldn't put certain ingredients in, or they were limited to how much they could put in. So there's a lot of just regional and local complexity. Seasonal and promotional products. This is an energy drinks company. They live for seasonal and promotional products, and then lots of others. And then finally, that whole issue of geographic expansion. So they had new plants and new plant extensions that they had to be able to do. They had a new sales organization, new customers, all of that complexity that happens on that end of the things. So they basically hit the jackpot for complexity and difficulty in scaling their organization. And after working with them for a while, they started with 3 basic areas of their company. One was point of sale materials. So merchandise. In the energy drink space, merchandise is a significant part of their business. And now they needed to be able to, again, get things distributed globally They needed to be able to look at language. They had to look at all of the various requirements. And so that was a very important part of it for them. Raw materials, new supply chain. So now they've got to figure out what are those raw materials and manage them more effectively than they could do with that giant spreadsheet. And then the actual production process for the beverages themselves. Now, what does that look like? How does that feel? And how do we manage that more efficiently? And that is one of those areas where, as we talked about earlier, it's something that Evolve, pardon me, does very, very well. So what did we create for them? Well, we created a solution that starts from a single landing page. There's no more Excel spreadsheets. And from that single landing page, they choose what it is what the product is or the product category is that they're looking to either create or manage. Is it point of sale materials? Is it a new point of sale materials, or are you having to extend it? And what are there multiple extensions? Because again, you've got multiple countries and languages and everything else that it needs to go to, plus merchandise, you've got colors and all kinds of great things. Raw materials, again, you've got a brand new supply chain. So you've got lots of different materials. You've got material extensions, which can be highly complex in that environment. And then it's the actual production process itself. How can we produce our beverages and new beverages more efficiently and more effectively? And this is the challenge that they presented us with. And after just a few months of working with them, what did we find? Well, they found that they reduced their go-to-market cycle times between 50 and 75%. So they literally cut their go-to-market time in half. Now, what would that mean for your business to be able to cut your go-to-market time in half? When we talk about at the very beginning of this presentation, the need for agility. Now you're able to get into the market faster with new beverages. You're able to respond to competitive threats more quickly. Again, massive amounts of savings for them in terms of time. They also gain visibility into that system. Remember, I talked about that. What we're able to give you is that ability to see everything that's happening top to bottom in your system and all those processes and sub-processes throughout. It was fully governed, which it hadn't really been with their spreadsheet system. And with that combination of visibility and governance, now they had a repeatable process. It fundamentally changed the way they went to market with their business. Because before, it simply was not repeatable at all. Every time they had a new beverage, they basically started with a blank workbook and then had to fill it in. Now everything works automatically. If you've got a new product, like I showed with that dashboard, it can pre-fill and predetermine what are the various things that need to go into it, depending on the type of product that it is. So this customer saw a massive amount of benefit from what we can do today. So that's not even looking at it from a cloud standpoint, although with Evolve, you can implement a hosted version of Evolve. That's the kind of benefit that automation and automating these complex data-intensive SAP processes can do for you today. So hopefully now you have a better idea of how Precisely can help you automate those complex data-intensive SAP processes. And if you'd like more information, you can go to precisely.com and look in the solutions section. You can find more directly about SAP automation under either the SAP tab in platforms or under the process automation tab. You can find demos and white papers and other case studies and lots of information there as well to help you get a better sense for how we can improve your processes. However, if you have a specific question that you're not sure about and would like to directly get in touch with us, contact us through the Contact Us form on precisely.com and somebody will get back to you, and let's set up a 30-minute conversation. Finally, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I know your time is valuable, and we very much appreciate your being here today. So thank you very much. Have a great day.